So in this chapter force, there are three parts in the chapter. Okay, A part has got numericals, and only A part have got numericals. So B and C part do not have any numericals. Okay, so the theory which you have in the A part you've already done in the 8th standard. If you remember 8th standard theory, it will help you. And B and C part is very small, like hardly two sides are there in each, and there's more of objective type questions in B and C. Okay, so first for the A part of the chapter, see, we have learned that when you apply the force on a body, the force may produce a motion. Now, the types of motion which are produced in a body, there are two types of motion. Okay, one is called as a translational motion. Okay, and the other one is called as what? Rotational motion. So translational, or it is also called as what? Linear motion. For example, say there is a ball which is lying on the floor out here. Okay, and then you apply force on this object. What will happen? This will start rolling further, correct? It starts rolling further. So that is called as what? Translational motion. So you can see this pen is rolling out there. So that's a translational motion. Okay, now what do you mean by rotational motion? So rotational motion is when, say for example, now out here you have a rod. Okay, I have an iron rod which is fixed at one end. Like for example, the door in your house or the gate of your building. And now if you apply force on this body, so we know that this whole of this gate now, it will not get displaced completely. What will happen to it? It will start rotating or spinning about its axis. Correct? So this point is called as point of axis of rotation, and the door or the object starts rotating about this axis. So then it is called as what? Rotational motion. So to produce rotational motion, one thing which is necessary is that you need a fulcrum, or it is also called as a pivot. Okay, or a pivot some people call, or hinge, what we call in the doors. So there has to be at least one, there has to be one end which is fixed. Okay, and then only the body will rotate about that point. Then only it will create a rotational motion. So for example of a rotational motion, we can say like the a wheel is pivoted at its center, like this, like when you turn the wheel of a cycle. So it is pivoted at the center. So the wheel of a cycle is going through what? Rotational motion. Okay. Now, so we are basically in this chapter we are learning more about this rotational motion. So before we start with this rotational motion, okay, we need to first learn one more very important term that we are going to use throughout the whole chapter. Okay. So first guys, now what do you mean by turning effect of force? So as we know, there are different effects of force, right? For example, squeeze, push, pull, stretch. So one of the effect is turning effect of force. Now what is the turning effect of force? So say out here, I'll just repeat this same example again. Say out here you have a body which is pivoted over here, and I'm applying a force of F out here, and say the distance from, okay, listen to this properly now, the distance from the fulcrum, or the distance from the point of axis of rotation to the point of application of force. Okay, that distance, got it now? The distance from the fulcrum to the point of application of force is called as what here? D. Now, how do you measure the turning effect of a force? Like how do you measure the magnitude? Correct. How do you measure the value of the turning effect of force? So that is measured using torque. Okay, it's called as what? Torque. So those who read more about cars and all, they must have already read about torque. Okay, So like they say the motor of a car is having a power of so much torque, or it has got so much torque. So it's called as either torque, or it is also called as moment of force. Okay, it is also called as what? Moment of force. Now how do you measure this moment of force or the torque? It's given by the formula force into perpendicular distance. Now what is the unit of force? Newton. Distance meter. So the unit of torque is Newton meter. Remember, we do not write it as joule, it's written as Newton meter only, and that's the SI unit. What would be the CGS unit? It will be dyne into centimeter. So what does this become? Dyne centimeter. And what is the relation between this SI and CGS? So the relation is what? That 1 Newton meter is equal to what? 1 Newton into 1 meter. 10 raised to 5 dyne into 10 raised to 2 centimeter, which is equal to what? 10 raised to 7 dyne centimeter. That's a conversion. I don't know if you recollect something from this conversion. We have already done this kind of a conversion, but that was in work power energy. We had proved 1 joule is equal to 10 raised to 7 earth. Okay, so I hope this all is clear to all of you. We can ask you to differentiate between them, define turning effect of force or torque, or to derive these, or what are the SI and CGS units. Okay, one more question. What are the factors which can affect the turning of a body? Or what are the factors on which the torque will depend? So obviously the factors on which the torque will depend will be what? Force and the perpendicular distance. More force, more torque. More perpendicular distance, more torque. Okay, done. Now next thing, okay, now we are learning about what do you mean by clockwise and anti-clockwise moments, or rather there is this principle which is called as what? Principle of moments. So we will learn about principle of moments now. So okay, now see, I'll just recap once again. We had learned what? That moment of force is equal to what? F into D. It means moment of force is directly proportional to force. Moment of force is directly proportional to distance. But force is inversely proportional to the distance. That is the perpendicular distance. What does it mean? If you are applying the force from more distance, then the force required to turn the body will be lesser. Correct? So let's say for example, this is your lever. If I have to turn this by applying a force F1 or applying a force F2, you know from which point will it be easier for you to push it, F1 or F2? At the point F2. Why? Because the distance is more. So we'll find that your F2 required to turn a body will be lesser than F1. Correct? So that is the concept. So there are a few give reasons which are based on this one. So to open or shut a door, the door handle is always provided at the farthest end. Okay. So most of them are simple. I think if you read it also, you will get them. Like in a bicycle also. So say if these are the pedals of a bicycle. So they can ask you that why are these pedals provided at some distance? Here, look. Why are they not provided very close to this? That is to increase the perpendicular distance. What happens when you increase the perpendicular distance? Less force is needed, so it becomes easier for you to turn it. Have you seen the steering wheel? The steering wheels of trucks are bigger than that of a car. Why? Again for the same reason, so that it will become easier for you to turn the body, to turn the steering wheel. Okay. And same thing also for the spanner also. Even for a spanner, we prefer spanners of longer handle. Again, why do we prefer spanner of longer handle? So that you can turn them with a lesser force. Now, let's say, okay, we'll first do now the principle of moments. Okay, see. Now before we start with principle of moments, first we will need to know what do you mean by equilibrium. Okay, what do you mean by equilibrium? So equilibrium means what, Equilibrium means that there are number of forces are acting on a body. So there are n number of forces acting on a body, but even after those forces are exerted, there is no change in the state of rest or motion of a body. Got it? I'll repeat once again. When n number of forces or any number of forces are acting on a body, but all those forces now will not make any change or will not produce any change in its state of rest or the state of motion of that body, then we say that the body is in equilibrium. Okay, like say, now there are two types of equilibrium. First equilibrium is what? Static equilibrium. Static means what? Body is at rest. And another one is called as a dynamic equilibrium, means what? That the body is in motion. So for example, if I tell you that a book is kept on a table, will this book ever move? No. This book will never move unless you apply some forces on it. Correct? So a body will be in what? A body or a book is lying on a table will be what? It will have what kind of equilibrium? Static equilibrium. So the book is exerting force in what direction? Downward direction. That's the weight of the book. Then the table also exerts force on the book, normal reaction force. But what's the resultant force on them? Zero. And hence this will never move. It will always stay there only. So these kind of equilibriums are called as static equilibrium, when the two forces are equal and opposite and then they are balanced. Okay. Same way, another example that's given in your textbook is of a beam balance. So even a beam balance now, when it is a balance in a horizontal position, meaning when you're getting the correct amount of your whatever the grains or grocery or something, that time what will happen, the arms or the beam balance will be in a horizontal position. So that time again it will be what? Static equilibrium. Okay. Same thing you can experience in a seesaw also. So if two friends are of the same weight exactly, and if they are sitting at the same distance from each other, then also they will experience what? Static equilibrium. Now guys, about the dynamic equilibrium. So in a dynamic equilibrium, what happens? A body is continuously under the influence of some forces, but the resultant force, or you can say, but even after these forces are acting on it, the body continues to be in the same state of motion. Then it is called as what? Dynamic equilibrium. Okay, so let's say for example that's the sun out here and earth is moving around it, right? Out here. So earth is moving in what direction? This direction. And the sun is attracting it in this direction. So though there are forces acting on the earth, right, but the earth continues to move in the same uniform circular motion. So that is called as what? A dynamic equilibrium. So if an aeroplane is moving at a constant height, when will it move at a constant height? If the downward force and the upward forces are equal. So if it is going at a constant height, it means the aeroplane is also going in what? Dynamic equilibrium. Okay, so these are the examples of equilibrium, static and the dynamic equilibrium. Now there are conditions for the equilibrium. Okay, there are two conditions for the equilibrium to happen, which is very, very important. I mean, every year they get this question in the exam, and a lot of people get this wrong also. So what are the two conditions? First condition is that the resultant of all the forces acting on the body should be zero. So there is a 10 Newton force, like out here, resultant force was what? Zero. So if the resultant of all the forces acting on a body is zero, then it will be in what? Equilibrium. And second condition, the second condition is that the algebraic sum of moments. Okay, what do you mean by algebraic sum of moments? Whatever moments are produced on this, they all should add up to a zero. So if the algebraic sum of moments of all the forces acting on the body about the point of rotation should be 0. So then only we say what, that it is in a equilibrium. Got it? So the resultant force should be 0. In simpler words, the resultant moment of force should also be equal to what? 0 about a point. Got it? So these are the two conditions for a body to be in equilibrium. Guys, now we will discuss about the principle of moments, which I told you, which is one of the most important part of this chapter. So we'll discuss the principle of moments now. Okay, so now see, what do you mean by principle of moments? So guys, first thing, we also call principle of moments as POM for a convenience. Okay, so this is the third POM you're learning probably. We learned first POM in machines, principle of machines. We learned second POM in calorimetry, principle of mixtures. And now this is the third POM we are learning, that is the principle of moments. Now see, if you look at this figure which I'm drawing out here, let's say this is a fulcrum. There is a force acting downwards, F1, and the perpendicular distance from fulcrum to here is D1. The force is F2, and the perpendicular distance from here to here is D2. Now this force F1 will create which moment? It will create a clockwise moment. F2 will create which moment? Anti-clockwise moment. Clockwise moment and anti-clockwise moment. I hope you understood how clockwise moment, because this force will turn the body like this around this fulcrum. So you have to go around the fulcrum and check whether it is clockwise or no. This force will turn the body in this direction. So you have to move the force about the fulcrum and then find out whether it is clock or anti-clockwise. So now, according to principle of moments, in equilibrium, okay, remember this is a condition, only in equilibrium it will hold true, not otherwise. So they say that in equilibrium, sum of clockwise moments, or sum of clockwise moments is equal to the sum of anti-clockwise moments. Sum of clockwise moments is equal to sum of anti-clockwise moments. What do you mean sum of anti-clockwise moments? So clockwise will be what? F1 into D1. Anti-clockwise will be what? F2 into D2. Okay. Now just one more logic. Look at this now. So what if they tell you that there is one more force F3 out here? Okay, which is at a distance of how much? D3. Then where to add this force? Okay, so how will you add this force now? First tell me what kind of moment is this force F3 producing? So it is producing a clockwise moment. How? This is the force F3 going up. Where is the fulcrum? Here, right? So it will rotate about the fulcrum like this. Got it? This is how it is rotating. So this will create what moment? Clockwise. So it will be what? Plus F3 into D3. Got it? So that is the principle of moments. So you may only write this much to explain it, but I did this extra step just to explain you. Because these had come in one of the school paper and most of the kids got tricked when they changed the direction. Okay. Now this next thing, it's called as a moment of couple. So now we are learning about moment of couple. Moment of couple. See, again let's say out here we have an iron rod which has got a fulcrum here. There is one force exerted on this F1 in the upward direction, and there is another force F2 exerted here in the downward direction. What kind of moment is produced by F1? Tell me. F1 will produce what moment? It will turn the body this way. So it will produce what moment? Anti-clockwise moment. What will F2 produce? Even that is producing what? Anti-clockwise moment. So because both are creating an anti-clockwise moment, what will happen to this body eventually? It will start spinning in what direction? In the anti-clockwise direction. This is what will happen. See, it will not get balanced like how it used to get balanced earlier, like in a seesaw. Okay, what will happen to this body? This body will start spinning or rotating. Okay, it will start spinning or rotating. So that is called as what? This moment which is produced is called as moment of couple. Got it? What is moment of couple? The forces which are produced out here, that they are the moments which are produced by these two forces, they will be adding up. Why will they add up? Because they are in the same direction. So that is called as moment of couple. So what is moment of couple? Moment of couple is defined as what, when there are two equal, opposite, parallel forces. Okay, when there are two equal and opposite parallel forces and they are not acting along the same line. What do you mean by not acting along the same line? It means that, for example, when there was a force acting here. Okay, look. What do you mean by not acting along the same line? So we can see one force is acting very downwards. If the another force was acting here upwards, F1. Got it? So I am applying two forces, equal and opposite, up and down. Okay, then will it create any moment of couple? No, because this body will not be able to rotate only. So they should not be along the same line. They have to be on two different lines. Like one is here, another one is there. But then only it will produce what? A couple force, or it will produce a moment of couple. Now, how do you find the moment of couple, or what is the formula for the moment of couple? So, for moment of couple, the formula is simple. I'll just write out here. Moment of couple is equal to what? Either force. You can multiply any force along with the couple arm. What is a couple arm? Couple arm is the distance from here to here. That's called as a couple arm. ARM. Okay, that's called as a couple arm. So either of these force F1 or F2 and into the distance between those two forces is called as couple arm. Okay, so this is like all the theory that you have in the A part of the chapter. I think it should take you around half an hour or something to learn all of this theory. Okay, after you do the theory, also do the learn and then write the circled question answers, and the tick ones you can do it in your textbook only. Yes, but before we'll start the B part, but before we start B part, I've got one interesting question for you. Okay, I'll do it out here only. See, let's say over here there is a roller. Okay, this is a side view. It's a road roller, like a whole big drum. Now this drum have to be lifted up. Okay, this is a platform. So this is some, you can say this is some kind of a platform over here, over which you want to lift up this drum. Correct? You want to lift this drum up over this platform. Now my question is, where should you apply the force on this? Where should you apply the force on this drum so that you will be able to lift it up onto this with the least force? Okay, this is a really good question. Where, in what direction and where should you apply the force so that you are able to lift this drum on this with the least force? Okay, if you want to try it yourself, pause the video because I am giving out the answer. So how to find out that? First, see, when I am lifting this drum up, where is going to be my fulcrum? So your fulcrum will be this point. Here is your fulcrum. That's your fulcrum. Now when I'm pushing this drum over this platform, okay, how is it going now? Where should I apply the force? So because I want to apply the least force, the distance should be what? Maximum from where I'm applying the force. What is the maximum distance from the fulcrum? That will be what? Diameter. Because in a circle, diameter is the longest chord. So I must apply the force here across the diameter. Only then I'll be able to lift it with the least force onto the platform. Okay, the same question is there in your textbook also. That's the question number 16 in your book. But there is some difference in the question I did and your textbook question. When you read the question, find out the difference and tell me what is it. Okay. Okay. Guys, now we are doing the B part of the chapter. So in the B part of the chapter, we basically have to learn about what you mean by center of gravity. Center of gravity. We are going to learn about this, which in short is also called as what? CG, center of gravity. Okay. Again, as I told you, this is very simple. It will take you 10-15 minutes only to learn the whole thing. So see, if I tell you, let's say this is an iron rod. Okay. Now every particle on this iron rod will exert a force. In what direction? Downwards. Correct? I am just drawing some of those particles, but every particle from here will exert a force or weight in the downward direction. But if I tell you that I want to balance this rod AB on my fingertip, on my finger, I want to balance this rod, like how I'm trying to balance this pen, or how some kids they try to balance a ruler in class. So if I want to balance it, where should I keep my finger? Basically, where should my fulcrum be? So obviously the answer is what? The midpoint of AB here. You should look out for what? For the midpoint of AB. Why at midpoint of AB you will be able to balance it? Because if you notice, all these particles will create a moment, right? Every particle will create a moment. What moment will it create? Clockwise. Every particle from here will also create a moment. What moment will it create? Anti-clockwise. But there is one point about which both the moments are getting what? Balanced. And that point where both the moments are getting balanced is called as what? Center of gravity. So what does it mean? It will feel as if that the whole weight is acting from this point. So if you keep your finger beneath that point, you will be able to balance it. And there is only one such point in this ruler. You move your finger left, you move your finger right, you will not be able to balance it without any external forces. Okay, so that point is called as what? Center of gravity. So I have told you the logic, the meaning of center of gravity. Okay, but you'll have to learn the textbook, same word to word as it is given in the textbook. Okay, now another thing, let's say if I'm holding both the ends A and B and I'll start pulling them, and then I want to convert them into a circle. So say I start bending it and I form a circle out of it. Let's say this was a point P. So this is your point P. Your point A have come here and your point B have come down here. Correct? That is after I started bending them. Now my question is, where was the center of gravity earlier? At the point P. Will the center of gravity still be at the point P only, or it would have shifted now? It must have shifted now, obviously. It will not be at the point P. Where will the center of gravity be now? Guess. So the center of gravity would be at this point here. Okay, which we also call as geometric center of the circle. So what do we need to notice here is that the center of gravity have changed its position as we change the shape. So if you change the shape of a body, then the center of gravity also changes, we noticed. Correct? Second thing, if you know, here the center of gravity was on the material, on the wire. Is the center of gravity here on the wire? No. Or is it inside this material? No. Okay, it is outside the material. So I'll repeat once again. A lot of people think that this point is inside this material. Okay, this is called as inside the circle and outside the circle. Material is only this circumference, this wire. So is the center of gravity lying on this material? No. Got it? So the center of gravity, it may happen that center of gravity is not on the material only. It is inside. It is in the air. You know how do you try to balance this kind of body like a bangle or a ring? You have to keep your finger at this point, just vertically below the center of gravity, and you may be able to balance that ring here. Like how some people, they can, or some students, they can spin a basketball well on their finger. Where is the center of gravity of that? It's inside the basketball, in the air. But you are trying to maintain the center of the sphere, the center of the ball, center of gravity above your finger, and that's why it is balanced. Got it? So most of the hollow objects like a hollow cylinder, hollow cone, sphere, they all will have the center of gravity inside inside that vessel that is in the air. Okay. So center of gravity can be outside the material. Now second thing is what about the okay, now there is one more factor. Okay, I am writing it as a second factor, but your textbook mentions that also is the same factor. Okay, but I feel that two factors on which the center of gravity depends. One of them was the shape of a body, and the second one is it also depends upon the mass distribution. It depends upon the mass distribution. What do you mean by mass distribution? Say you have an iron rod. Say you have a rod. This right side of it is made up of iron, and the left of it is made up of what? Wood. Will you be able to balance at this point? No, it will not work. You will not be able to balance at this point. Where will your center of gravity be now? You might have to balance somewhere here. Why? Because iron is a heavier material compared to wood, and that's why you cannot mark it on the midpoint. Got it? So your center of gravity would have shifted somewhere there. Okay. Now we are going to discuss about where is the center of gravity for certain objects or certain figures. So we are right now first learning about the center of gravity for the standard shapes, which they do ask you in your exams also. Where is the center of gravity for these standard shapes? Okay, so first thing, the center of gravity for an iron rod, which we already discussed, it's the midpoint of the rod, like the last picture. Next thing, where is the center of gravity for a circular disc? It will be again what? Geometric center. For a circular ring also, geometric center. Now, if it is a solid sphere or it is a hollow sphere, it does not matter. Whether it's a solid sphere or a hollow sphere, it does not matter. Where will the center of gravity be? It will again be the geometric center of the sphere. Okay, if it is a solid or a hollow cylinder, then also your center of gravity will not change. Okay, where would the center of gravity be? It will be the midpoint of axis of cylinder. What does this mean now? See, let's say this is a cylinder. Okay, this is a cylinder. There is a center point. From there, again we've drawn here center, and then this is your radius r. This is your another radius r, and that's your h, height. So they say where will the center of gravity for this be? This is called as the axis. Okay, this is your axis. So your center of gravity will be here, meaning where? At the midpoint of this axis. This is your CG. And as I told you, it does not matter whether it's a hollow or solid. Okay, but wait, now there is a catch. Let's say if your cylinder was half filled with water, only this much was filled with water, is the center of gravity still at the same point H? No, it will not be at the point H. Your center of gravity would have shifted now. So say we have got a new center of gravity, say somewhere here, out here. So this is our new CG because we filled it up with water. Correct? That's why I told you, it also depends upon the mass distribution, not just on the shape. Then the next one is, where is the center of gravity for a solid or for a hollow cone? Guys, now in a cone, the center of gravity, okay, will be different for different, I mean for a solid it will be different, as well as for a hollow it will be different. Okay, where will the center of gravity be for a solid cylinder? So it will be at this point, h/4 from its base on its axis. Okay, whole thing is important, only h/4 is not correct. So it is at a distance h/4 from the base on its axis. And where will it be for a hollow cone? So this is for a solid cone. Where will it be for a hollow cone? At a distance h/3 from its base on its axis. This is for a hollow cone. So body is more stable in a solid cone because the center of gravity is lower. Okay. Then the next one is for a triangular lamina. What do you mean by lamina? Lamina means like a plain surface, like a sheet of a paper, a cardboard or something. Okay, which is basically not more like a 3D object. So in a triangular lamina, where is the center of gravity? So you can say whichever, any triangle, scalene triangle, equilateral, it is applicable for all of them. So if you know what a median is, what do you mean by median? Starting from the vertex, it will meet at the midpoint. Again, starting from the vertex, it will meet at the midpoint. Starting from the vertex, it will meet at its midpoint. That point is called as what? Center of gravity. If you know, there is also a technical term for that point, centroid. You cannot use this term, remember. Centroid you can write only in math. Here you will have to write point of intersection of all the three medians. Okay, that's how you will get the center of gravity. Clear? Now, so you have to learn all these figures and the positions where the center of gravity is. Now, one more very interesting thing, that what if I just suspend, hang any object. For example, if I'm just suspending this sheet like that vertically. Okay, you see how, I don't know if you can see, but this is how it will appear to you when I'm holding it vertically like this. It will not stand like that. Look, it will not stand like that. It will fall like this. Got it? So any object, let's say any object wherever suspended freely, it will hang in such a way that its point of suspension will pass through the center of gravity. Like say, see, where is the center of gravity for, look, for this object? Where is the center of gravity for this object? You know, it will be here. Meaning what? It is outside this L-shaped cardboard. Correct? Now, if I would have suspended this L-shaped cardboard here like this. Okay, the rough sketch, guys. So, if you are suspending your L-shaped cardboard here like this, over here freely, and if you draw this vertical line down, what will you find? That your center of gravity will pass through vertical line. So like for example, rope walker, you know why rope walker, why they are able to balance themselves on rope? Because their center of gravity is passing through the rope, through that base area, otherwise they will topple down. I'll give you one simple example, you can try this one at home. So say out here we've got a chair, and the center of gravity for this chair is here, which is passing through the base area. Now we start tilting this chair, like how we keep on rocking our chair while studying, if it ever happened with you. So while you're rocking the chair, let's say you started rocking a little behind, and now the center of gravity is passing through the base area again. So say you rock the chair here, and then when you release it, it'll again come back to the starting position, this position. Why? Because your center of gravity is within this base area. Now gather some more courage and then again start rocking it. At some point what happens, now your center of gravity will exactly pass through the base area, just missing that leg. Okay, so this is the point when your body is exactly like it is stable now. It will not fall behind nor will it come forward, it will stay there only. But we know it's difficult to maintain center of gravity exactly at one point, and that's why within some time again you might go further. Now what if you would have rocked your chair a little more behind, then you will topple down, because then your center of gravity will fall where? Outside the base area. That's why. Got it? Okay. Then next one. So I think so that is all you have in this part of the chapter, in the B part of the chapter. Now the last part which is left is the C part. Okay, it's a little difficult, the C part, to do online. We will still try. Okay, I'll start the C part now. Just one part is there which is a little tough in this to understand. Okay, let's start first with this now. So, okay, in the C part, we are learning more about what do you mean by uniform circular motion, centripetal and centrifugal forces. So see, first of all, as we know, there are two types of motion. I hope everybody knows what do you mean by circular motion, right? So there are two types of motion we already learned, like a translational and a circular motion and a linear motion. So what do you mean by uniform circular motion? First of all, what do you mean by uniform circular motion? So we know the meaning of circular motion. Uniform means what? Moving at a constant speed. It's called as a uniform circular motion. Now there are two types of motions are possible, right? One is a uniform circular motion and other one is what? Uniform linear motion. So, okay, I'll do one thing. First we'll classify, we'll compare them first. So, the two types of motion is what? First one is a linear motion and the second one is a circular motion. I'll repeat once again. These both are uniform motion only. Meaning in both the cases, body is covering equal distances in equal interval of time. What do you mean linear motion? First of all, in a linear motion, our body will move in a straight line. In a circular motion, our body will keep on spinning. Correct? It will keep on like a you can say motion of the earth around the sun, motion of the moon around the earth. They will be circular motion. Linear motion, for example, when the light rays are reaching from sun to earth, they travel in a straight line. So that's like a linear motion. Now in a uniform motion, these bodies are going to travel with a constant speed. Even this one will travel with what? Constant speed when it is in uniform circular motion. But out here, they will also be moving with a constant velocity. Why constant velocity? Because there is no change in the direction. It just keeps moving in a straight line. But these ones are moving with what? Variable velocity. Variable velocity. Now, okay, if a body is moving with constant velocity, what is the acceleration? 0. If a body is moving with variable velocity, acceleration is not 0. I hope you remember this concept. So if you don't know, remember acceleration is what? Rate of change of velocity is called as acceleration. Okay. Now, if a body is going with 0 acceleration, okay, so out here, now if you remember Newton's second law, F is equal to ma, but since a is 0, F is also 0. But out here, your F will not be equal to 0. Why? Because a is not equal to 0. So what happens, if you are going in a uniform linear motion, you do not experience any force on your body. So when you are going on a straight road in a car, you must have noticed you do not experience any force at a uniform speed. See, when you start your car, like when you start accelerating from 0 to 20, 100, whatever, you may feel acceleration. But once it keeps going at 80 km per hour continuously on a straight road, you don't feel any force on your body. But if the same car was going in a circular direction, like while you're going on a zigzag road or on ghats or something, or on a circular ground, you experience the forces which you feel that they are throwing you outwards. So when a body, like for example, your car is taking a very sharp turn, that is the time when you start harassing your other co-passengers in a car or in a bus. You start leaning on them, you pushing them, saying that I'm getting forced out. Correct? So you may move in, out depending upon the motion. Got it? So whenever a body is in the uniform circular motion, you are definitely going to experience those kind of forces. You might have also experienced the same thing, when you go into these rides and all. So, when you go to, like if you've been to SL World or any of those parks, you will, there are many rides where you experience those forces, especially when those rides where, you are continuously moving in a circular direction. Okay, now guys, what happens? Now in circular direction when you're moving, you experience a force which is called as a centripetal force. Okay, it's called as centripetal. Centri means center, petal means seeking. So it's called as centripetal force. It means what? That if you're moving, let's say for example, this is the motion of the car. So on a straight road, a car is moving this way. Now you can see it is not moving in a perfect circle, because every time your car will not go in a perfect circle. Let's say, but this arc forms a part of some circle. This forms a part of some circle, correct? So everywhere it's like a part of some of the circle. So every time when your car is moving, you will experience a force which pulls you towards the center. That's why it is called as what? Center seeking force. Okay, at every point it will try to pull you at the center. That is called as center seeking force or centripetal force. So once you will fall on the left side, let's say if you are sitting in the middle, first you will harass people on the left side, then you will harass people on the right side, again left, and then again now it's a turn for the people who are sitting on your right there. Okay, so these are the kind of forces that you will experience while you are moving on a zigzag road or on a road where there are curvatures are there. Clear? So these forces are called as what? Centripetal force. Okay, now we are going to learn about one more force which will make this thing more confusing now. Okay, so before this gets more confusing, I'll just tell you one more. There are 3-4 examples in your book. Like for example, when an electron is moving around the nucleus, what is the force? Which force is centripetal force? Electrostatic. When Earth is moving around the sun, gravitational force of the sun is centripetal. When moon is moving around the earth, gravitational force of the earth on moon is the centripetal force. And while you are holding, when a stone is tied at the end of a string and you start whirling in a circular path, the people that keep moving that, the string will keep moving around like that. So that is called as what? Again, there also is a centripetal force, and the tension in the string or the tension force in the string is called as the centripetal force out there. Now there is one more force what we are learning about, that is called as a centrifugal force. After you start learning centrifugal force, then you will start getting more confused now about the centripetal force. Now see guys, what is a centrifugal force? Now centrifugal force is what? To understand this force, those people who've done Fugdi in the past, okay, if you've done Fugdi with your friends, you'll understand it better if you've done the Fugdi. See, what is a centrifugal force now? Actually, this is a fictitious force or a virtual force, meaning this force does not even exist. But why are we studying about this? This is just to explain you the certain type of a motion or the force that you feel you experienced. Okay, so I'll make it simple. Let's say out here, with this example is on certain assumption now. So let's say there is a proton over here, or you're doing Fugdi and some of your friend is inside. Okay, say there is somebody is inside here and there is another person who is here outside. Okay, so I will have to take an example, some example here. So okay, I think I'll take an example of Alia Mithaiwala and Malika Das. So let's say Malika Das is standing in between and Alia is at this end, and they are holding their hands like that, and then they start spinning here like that round. Now they are moving very very fast. Okay, let's say they are making 50 rounds per minute, 50 RPM. Okay, how can or why can they move so fast? That's because we all know Malika is very strong, and you all already know about Alia. We studied about her in the other chapter, in the pulleys also. So let's see. So when they are moving at every point now, actually Alia wants to move out in a tangential direction. Okay, in a tangential direction. So this is where it wants to move at every point. But as we know, electron is not free to move out. It gets pulled inside. By whom? By this nucleus, which is positively charged. So this electrostatic force is not letting, it is at 90 degree to this, and it is not letting this electrons to move out. Correct? So this force is called as what? Centripetal force. Now let's say they keep on taking those rounds, Malika and Alia, and at some point, let's say Malika got a call from Khushi. Okay, so now Malika does not care and she just releases her hands in between to answer the call. So what will happen, at that point, Alia will what? Start flying. Now let's assume, that this accident happened at this point over here, that Malika left her. Now when Malika left her at this point, what will happen, if let's say, if we are taking video, we are taking the pictures from the top, from here, from where you can actually seeing this image right now. If we take the pictures in the burst mode, what will you find? These are going to be the different positions of Alia. First position, Alia second position, third position, fourth position, and so on. Got it? And that's how it will keep on continuing. So she'll eventually keep going in a straight line. Got it? She'll keep going in a straight line, and say there is Ridhima out here to catch her. So she'll go straight into Ridhima's hands. Got it? So when Ridhima is looking at Alia, what does she feel? That she is traveling in a straight line, which we also called as a tangential path. Okay, that she is coming in a tangential path. But when Malika is looking at Alia, she feels sorry for her. But when she looks at Alia, what does she feel? How's Alia moving now over here? She is moving outward. Meaning what? She is moving away from here, right? That's what even Alia feels. Alia feels that she is just thrown out of that circle. But actually, how is she traveling? In a straight line. But Malika will feel that she is moving what? Along this radius, right? So we call it as what? Radially outwards. That's again another keyword, that she is moving radially outward. So those are the two keywords we need to use out here. So see, the same motion, okay, it's the same motion, but Ridhima will have a different opinion and Malika out here will also have a different opinion. Ridhima will say that no, Alia came in a straight line, whereas Malika will say that no, Alia was moving outwards. So to explain Malika, this kind of motion, or to explain Alia, we say that there is a centrifugal force, meaning a force which pushes you outward, is called as what? Centrifugal force. But as I told you, these forces are virtual force. They do not actually exist, and we are learning, or they explain this force only to make you understand the motion, like how you are moving outwards. Also, one more thing, if you noticed, in the beginning, before Malika left her, in the beginning when they were continuously taking rounds now, Malika would always feel that Alia is at rest because she's in front of her. But Ridhima felt what? That they were always in a state of motion. So see, here also there are two perspectives. Ridhima says that Alia was in motion continuously, in a circular motion from here. Whereas Malika felt that Alia was always at rest because she was always in front of her before she left her hands. Okay, so you all read this part properly. It is a little confusing. The more you think, you might get a little more confused, but then only you'll understand it better. Okay.